Welcome to episode 326 of the Postal Hub podcast. I'm Ian Kerr. Joining me in a moment is Dean Maciuba, Managing Partner North America at Crossroads Parcel Consulting. We're going to talk about the parcel delivery scene in the US, including FedEx, UPS, US Parcel Service, US Postal Service, Amazon, the regional carriers, what's happening with the retailers, what's been happening in 2023 in peak, and a look at what might be happening in 2024. Joining me on the line is Dean Maciuba. Dean is Managing Partner North America for Crossroads Parcel Consulting. Dean, welcome back to the podcast. We're going to have a bit of a look at what's been happening around your neck of the woods in parcel delivery. I mean, as we record this, Dean, we're in the middle of peak season, aren't we? Okay, before we get stuck into things, you have any quick observations on peak season so far? What's been happening in terms of volumes and things like that?
First of all, thanks for having me, Ian. Very much similar to last year so far. Practically no significant delays being reported by anybody. And it looks like that e-commerce revenue so far for peak may be up 5 to 10%, depending on, the individual merchant. But, revenue up 5 to 10% with inflation in the 5 to 6% range doesn't mean that volume is significantly up. And that's the key. Revenue's up because inflation has still, it's calmed down inflation, but it's still up there. But volume is not up significantly. And in many cases, volume is down a little bit. So, so far, peak has been very, very good. And I'm just not seeing any negative press about delivery delays. Also, remember that our Thanksgiving shipping period was just about a week ago, and we're still 3 weeks out in front of the holiday, Christmas Day. So even if there are minor delays, they still have a long time to deliver those packages to get them delivered prior to the Christmas holiday itself. So right now, I'd say peak is going very, very well.
Let's talk about shipper diversification, because this has been one of the things that you've noticed over the past 12 months, and what all this means for parcel pricing and competition for the coming year of 2024.
I think what I'd want to do is just take a step back and say, what's out there that's allowing diversification to take place in a much more aggressive way? It's definitely technology specific to the shipping platforms that are out there that generate the labels. And then also the integration process for the carriers, for the shipping platforms, the technology capabilities of the individual merchants, that's all improved. So from a technology standpoint, they can manage multiple carriers much more easily than they previously could. I'm talking about the e-commerce merchants specifically. So what we're seeing is an increase in the number of carriers that a lot of merchants are utilizing. Some of that is being forced by rate increases or the special holiday pricing, the demand pricing for UPS and FedEx. There's other companies doing it too, but they're the primary villains in this scheme to take money away from the merchants. I think they're doing a good job. The merchants are doing a good job at looking at alternatives because they have the platforms down, the technology to make it happen more easily. The things that they have to manage is, do they have revenue requirements for UPS and FedEx that would result in penalties if they move too much business over? What's also interesting, and I got this information from something you sent me yesterday in your daily message to people about what's going on in the industry. And what I finding to be really interesting is that it looks like the change to more diversification really had its legs a year ago. And during the past year, it started with last peak season. So we're not seeing a huge increase in diversification, I believe, moving from FedEx and UPS to the regional carriers as much this year as we saw last year at this time, because most of it happened last year. Also, even though the talk about FedEx and UPS is generally they're greedy and they're taking money away from the merchants and they're nasty big corporations, while they did announce their general rate increases that'll take effect at the end of this month and in January, they're also much more aggressive in discounting. And they have to be, because there's a lot of reasons out there why volume is down significantly for FedEx and UPS. We don't have to go into all those reasons, but we can safely say that demand is significantly down. Well, some of that might be because the business has moved to other carriers, and there's other options for moving e-commerce shipments from a merchant or a big box store to the end user. So both FedEx and UPS are discounting more aggressively than I've seen in maybe 10 years, because they're both in a little bit of trouble for different reasons. And so because of this discounting, that's also resulting in, I don't think, any additional business in any meaningful way being moved by merchants to the regional carriers, because there's a lot of discounting with FedEx and UPS, and you're just not gonna, it's not necessary to make those moves. The regional carriers are all privately held here. So there's no public information about their performance like there is for FedEx and UPS. But I'm getting, from speaking to customers and speaking to other consultants and things like that, I'm getting the feel that they're struggling a little bit from a profitability standpoint because of the discounting being imposed by FedEx and UPS. So I think from a standpoint of service, I think it's going to be a good year for all the carriers. I think the regionals will manage service very, very well. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, UPS and FedEx did not lose a lot of business to the regionals because of their discounting.
Now, before we move on, just want to mention, Dean did in passing mention the Daily Delivery Digest there. And if you want to sign up for the Daily Delivery Digest, go over to thepostalhub.com, and follow the links to the Daily Delivery Digest, and I'll send you an email every day with all the headlines from around the delivery world so that you're on top of things like Dean. You can be an insider. Just like Dean. And Dean, you mentioned the perception of FedEx and UPS as being mean. No, I didn't say bloodthirsty. You said something. I thought, wow, yeah, well, you and I must move in very different circles, because most of my friends are talking about football and things like that. Anyway, let's move onwards before I laugh at another one of my feeble jokes. One of the trends that we've seen, probably led by Amazon, is about taking delivery in-house. Retailers taking their delivery in-house. And there are some other major retailers doing stuff along these lines in the USA. Tell us what's happening and what you think it means for things like market share, for competitivity in e-commerce, and even speed of delivery. Some of the changes are local delivery services are now available more than ever because of the growth of e-commerce, and there's demand for that. So whether you're a large big box store like Walmart or Target, or a smaller intermediate sized retailer, or even if you're a small local retailer, you now have options for hiring local delivery companies to provide white glove delivery, where they'll take basically anybody's packages and provide usually next day delivery within the same market. So there's options there now for everybody. Well, if they're not using UPS or FedEx and they're using a third party and it's not a big brand name, are they taking it in-house because they're delivering it with their own employees? Well, not technically. They're not taking it in-house. They're still vendoring it out. But these are alternatives to FedEx and UPS using these local delivery companies, because the demand is there to support delivery. And if you're a small store or merchant in any size city, chances are Home Depot and the major players are offering same day or next day delivery in that city by using some type of local delivery arrangement. It might be a national agreement that vendors out relationships with local service providers.
So you have to be, as a merchant, even a small merchant, you have to be prepared to compete with everybody else and provide quick commerce solutions. And most aren't doing that yet, but they're moving in that direction with same-day delivery. And then also definitely next-day delivery. And this is more important in at this time of year during peak shipping than any other time. So there are options there. Now let's move to the big guys, Target and Walmart. Target bought Deliv many years ago, and they've been delivering their packages on their own for a very long time. They actually have a very solid reputation for leading the way in using their stores as forward stocking fulfillment centers. Walmart, the same thing. But Target managed it a little bit better historically. Walmart has caught up now to Target in terms of using those stores to source deliveries from. Target in recent years has added sortation centers. And what it means now is prior to having a larger sortation center network, you could only source packages from a store in the immediate area of that store. You couldn't source that package and then deliver it 50 miles away because you probably only had the capability to deliver with between 0 and 10 miles of the store. With the sortation center model, now numerous stores within a certain geography come together and send all their packages to the sortation center. It's a hub and spoke delivery network, and then they all go back out for delivery. That means the store in closest proximity to the need, to the demand, to the customer, it doesn't have to have the product. It can be a store that's 50 miles away. The product then is going to go to a sortation center and then go back for delivery through that store. You have both Walmart and Target using their stores as delivery centers. They call them different things, and they're constantly upgrading their technology. If you pay close attention to these stores as you're driving around here in the U.S., you're always seeing a little bit of construction and signage changes, and they're more than ever emphasizing the capabilities of these stores for offering pickup or delivery. Again, we know that Target has Deliv, and Deliv also offers their services to other retailers or companies. So that is working out fine for them. Walmart has been using a plethora of local delivery companies for a long time. They have their GoLocal network, which is a white glove delivery network. And technically, the focus of that group, and that company is owned by Walmart, is to deliver for everybody else, not necessarily with a focus on Walmart. Do I think that the GoLocal network is delivering some packages for Walmart? Yeah, they are. Same-day delivery packages and next-day delivery packages. But those stores, GoLocal's focus right now is offering delivery services to Walmart's competitors. And what it should do is help them offset their overall cost of operating local delivery networks if they can fill those networks up with packages from many, many more companies. Walmart, again, uses a lot of different third-party companies to do local delivery. That's not going to change soon, although I see Walmart starting with a focus on shrinking that aspect of the business. And Walmart is still talking about growing in-house delivery, pure in-house delivery by Walmart employees. Now, they've tried this in the past, and I think it's been a mixed result, but they're still going to make that work. And they're going to have their own employees, in addition to everything else, delivering for them. So what that means is they can absolutely compete more with Amazon, better or more effectively with Amazon, because obviously Amazon has all this same day and next day delivery capability via Amazon Flex, the largest on-demand delivery network in the world here in the US. So they needed to do this. Both Walmart and Target needed to expand their capabilities for local delivery. And then there's a lot of logistics stuff going on in the background to support it, changes at the store. They're still doing this, and they're becoming more effective. So what does that mean? Well, the question is, are they taking business away from Amazon via these local initiatives that support quick commerce or same day and next day delivery? They probably are. Also, customers right now, merchants on the Amazon marketplace that fulfill via the Amazon website, they probably are taking business away from Amazon to a certain extent, and they might have been self-fulfilling that business via FedEx or UPS. So these initiatives, and now they might be going direct via Target and Walmart, via their own networks. So in a funny way, if they're taking the business away from Amazon, it's quite possible that they're hurting FedEx and UPS business, because merchants that self-fulfilled that were on those marketplaces aren't doing that anymore. I don't know if that makes sense. It's a little complicated, but it's a world of change going on out there. There's no question. And there are opportunities for Target and Walmart not to put a world of hurt on Amazon, but to start competing with them more effectively from a standpoint of quick commerce.
Now, you've just mentioned Amazon, and I wanted to ask you a bit about the report just recently that Amazon is now the biggest private carrier in the US. It was in the next paragraph. First paragraph says, Amazon bigger than FedEx and UPS. And then the next paragraph says, but not as big as the US Postal Service. Anyway, putting that to one side, a year or two ago, I can't remember when it was now, you and I had a conversation on this very podcast about, is Amazon really a parcel carrier that should be mentioned in the same breath as the likes of FedEx and UPS? And your perspective at the time was, no, it shouldn't, because it's something more than that. Anyway, what do you think about all this, Dean? What do you think about this news that Amazon is shipping more parcels than the likes of FedEx and UPS? What does it really mean? Is it just an interesting statistic, or should we care about it?
Well, no, I think you do have to care about it, but you have to understand what that means. Amazon delivers more packages to residents than UPS and FedEx. No question about it. But they're just e-commerce shipments that are originating from within the Amazon network. And Amazon, so that you have that colossal e-commerce organization that is part and parcel to all of what Amazon does, to include delivery. Well, FedEx and UPS aren't retailers. They're not e-commerce merchants. They're pure carriers. There's a lot that Amazon doesn't do. They're not integrated carriers. They don't make pickups to any company. They will arrange to get packages into their network if it's an Amazon merchant that wants to ship with Amazon. But that's being limited to merchants that are on the Amazon marketplace. So are they delivering more residential packages than UPS and FedEx? Absolutely. They can't compare to UPS or FedEx from a standpoint of all the services they offer as integrated carriers, because Amazon is not an integrated carrier. They're delivering retail packages to homes today. Is this going to change down the line? I think it is. And Amazon is going very, very slow in carefully developing this capability. I think they're doing it the right way. They're a long-term incremental threat to more of UPS's and FedEx's business that is maybe not necessarily e-commerce related, but that's going to take years to develop that.
What about Amazon's foray into the business scene, the B2B shipments and selling to companies, the office supplies and all of that?
Yeah, okay. So not talked about very much at all by Amazon. I don't have the number in front of me. I believe Amazon's business-to-business sales, it could be $20 billion. I mean, it's a lot. It's a huge number here in the US. They're not talking about it because of all these antitrust actions being taken against Amazon by the US government. And the last thing Amazon wants the US government to understand is they're really poaching a lot of this B2B business and delivering it with their own capability. And that's probably the bigger threat to FedEx and UPS. There's a lot of articles out there saying that, UPS and FedEx don't care that their market share of the residential delivery is going down. As a matter of fact, it's by design because they're the least productive and least profitable shipments that those companies have. However, it's the business-to-business delivery that really drives FedEx and UPS capability because those are multi-piece deliveries, whereas the residential e-commerce shipment is usually one package. So as their B2B business, Amazon's just grows dramatically faster, much faster than the traditional e-commerce residential delivery, that can put a little bit of hurt on FedEx and UPS. It's going to negatively impact their productivity because it'll be fewer packages per delivery to businesses like distributors. So that's a threat. It's a serious threat long term.
And if you want to talk to Dean to find out more about this, I'll share Dean's contact details at the end of this episode. Because I know, Dean, you've been talking about Amazon and B2B for so many years. It's something we don't talk about a lot in the delivery world because, well, I suppose it's because e-commerce deliveries is just a little bit more sexy, shall we say. I don't know if that's quite the right word, but it gets the headlines more. And perhaps that's because the people who write about parcels are the people who are shopping online and not necessarily looking at how their own businesses are doing their procurement and things like that. Anyway.
I'll tell you one other thing quick. Amazon's technology capabilities are amazing. We know this, right? And their web services group has all this capability. One of the things that they do when they go in and they offer their B2B delivery services to distributors and things like that, they can offer them at no charge amazing analytical capabilities in managing how they spend money on their products that they're distributing, if they're a distributor. Now, they're not all distributors, but a lot of them are. So you throw in Amazon's capability from that standpoint, which is surpassed by nobody, and it's an incentive for businesses to look to Amazon for delivery, and also it's less costly. I mean, estimates I'm hearing are if you're shipping with Amazon, if you've made the change, you're probably saving 20 to 30% per transaction, which is significant. Also, if you do that, you pretty much got to hand over your distribution business to Fulfillment by Amazon, which helps Amazon offset the cost of that whole network. So it all comes together, and we've been preaching this for a long time. It's getting a little bit more serious every year for FedEx and UPS, and you can see it in their earnings and their volume.
One final comment then about volumes, Dean, because looking ahead, you've been saying that there's a bit of the soft economy is having a bit of an impact on parcel volumes and indeed on the carriers themselves. A few quick comments on that before we wrap up, please.
I think the best thing to do is to look at the reporting from the past 2 weeks on our Thanksgiving week, Black Friday, Cyber Monday shipping activity. And, it looks like that revenue's up 5 to 10%. We mentioned that earlier. I'm going to say volume's probably up around 5%. A 5% increase or flat to 5%, I would say, for the individual merchants. If it's at 5%, I think that represents an economy that's doing okay, but isn't on fire. And that's where we stand right now here in the U.S. People haven't crawled into holes. The economy hasn't tanked. We've got inflation and interest rates are high and labor costs are up. But so we're in a soft economy, but we're not in an economy that's going backwards. And a lot of people for like 2 or 3 years now have been waiting for the crash. And it's just not happening, and it's not likely to happen.
Dean, if people want to get in contact with you or find out more about Crossroads Parcel Consulting, where should they go?
The best way would be to just send me an email, and it's dean@crossroadsparcel.com.
I'll also put a link on the episode page on thepostalhub.com to Dean's own LinkedIn page where Dean shares various bits and pieces, morsels of wisdom, let's say, during the year. And hopefully, Dean, you'll continue to do so for 2024. Thank you very much again, Dean, for being part of the Postal Hub podcast. By the way, everybody, Dean is our most frequent guest on the Postal Hub podcast. And I think you can understand why when he shares with pearls of wisdom with us. Dean, I'm being overly eloquent. Maybe it's the Christmas season. I've just been gripped with the fever of goodwill. Dean Maciuba, Managing Partner, North America for Crossroads Parcel Consulting. Thank you very much for joining us on the Postal Hub podcast today.
Thank you for having me, and happy holidays to everyone.
Coming soon on the Postal Hub podcast, Kevin Seller from Escher, David Spottiswoode from Hurricane, Mark Fallon and Mike Plunkett are going to talk about the US Postal Service. Kate Muth will join us to talk about developments in international mail. Jonathan Boaziz from Cardinal is going to talk about things like combining letters and parcels for delivery. And we've got various other wonderful guests joining us as we round out 2023 and as we begin 2024. Don't miss any of these episodes. Subscribe to the Postal Hub podcast through any podcast platform, I suppose. But primarily, you've got Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Spotify sounds like the podcast platform they use in Hogwarts or something like that. Anyway, subscribe, leave a review, leave a rating, all good stuff. Remember, you can subscribe to my newsletter as well over at thepostalhub.com. And if you want to email me about anything at all, my email address is ian@thepostalhub.com. I'm Ian Kerr. Thanks for listening in, and I look forward to your company next time on the Postal Hub podcast.